You're listening to an IOE podcast.
Powered by UCL Minds.
Welcome to the ECF Staffroom. I'm Elaine Long.
And I am Mark Quinn.
We are programme leaders for the UCL Early Career Teacher Development Programme. Why are we in the staff room? We are here because this is where the best professional learning conversations always take place. This is where problems can be aired bluntly and where solutions can be explored.
Over the course of this series, we will hear the voices of different colleagues as they come into the ECF staff room. We will hear from early career teachers themselves and from the mentors and induction tutors who support them. We will talk about all things ECF, the challenges and the joys. So why don't you enjoy a coffee with us, perhaps even grab a biscuit and sit down to half an hour of ECF staff room chat.
Welcome to the ECF staff room, Annie and Helen. We're particularly grateful to you for coming in, as we know it's your Easter holiday. So we'd like to reward you with a nice drink, but actually there's no need to ask you what your coffee routine is, because I'm aware there are 3 people in the staff room that know each other very well.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to have to fess up to this one, aren't we? So Annie, do you want to say it or shall I say it?
No, you say it.
Okay, so Annie Powell is my wife, and I know what Annie takes for her coffee. Actually, are you going to have a decaf coffee, Annie, or is it if this were your first coffee, would it be a proper full fat caffeinated coffee, or would it be decaf?
No, not in school. It's always decaf. I get overexcited otherwise.
Yeah,
I'm like the kids.
And Helen is one of our oldest and dearest friends. Actually, not so old, Helen, but longest serving friends. and you're a bit spoiled when it comes to coffee. How do you? Because Helen's dear husband Tony is a bit of an aficionado when it comes to making coffee. So he makes only the finest. How do you manage in school, Helen, with coffee?
Well, actually, we've just started a little coffee club, and we buy bags. So we have all the bags of the very nice coffees and we share them out. And yeah, that's our latest thing. So I do get a decent cup of coffee at school, because otherwise it would be the instant stuff, and that just doesn't hack it, I'm afraid.
I am in no way surprised at that. No way surprised at all. Yeah, apart from having the time to drink it. But
well, yeah, that's another issue. But
So, Helen, I'm not surprised you managed to perfect your coffee routine, because I know that you and Annie have been teaching for 29 years. So I'm sure along with perfecting your coffee routine, you both have lots of insights about how you perfected your teaching in the classroom as well. And we're really excited about this episode, particularly the opportunity to exploit the wisdom of 2 teachers who have 58 years combined of teaching between them. It's not often we get the opportunity to tap into such a rich source of wisdom. So I know our listeners will be really keen to hear about what got you into teaching and what an average day is like for you. So Annie, can I ask you to start us off with that one? What took you into teaching? What was your route, and what's an average day like for you now?
Oh my word. I took a slightly circuitous route into teaching, because I was actually, after I did my history degree, I worked in offices for a bit, and I got bored. I mean, I was always the one who did every little extra thing. I did a display or I did whatever, but it was I was really not feeling very challenged, and I wanted to do something which involved history as well. And I've been doing some adult literacy teaching with a friend of mine who was a primary school teacher, and she was really good and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's teaching, but I didn't want to do primary. I wanted to sort of do more with history, so I went for secondary teaching, and yeah, it's worked out quite well for me overall, I think. So at the moment, much as I love teaching history, I'm teaching loads of sociology. So in the last couple of years, I've had to retrain myself and to become a sociology specialist, which is quite challenging. So I'm also on the extended leadership team, so I do lots of duties and things. So basically, I spend most of my day just interacting with lots of people, smaller people and bigger people, and just having a lot of fun, really. Not always fun, but mostly fun. It's good.
So Helen, can I ask you the same question? What took you into teaching, and what's an average day like for you now?
So I think part of me always wanted to be a teacher. I mean, I absolutely loved history, had loads of history books, had my picture of Queen Elizabeth I on my wall for many, many years when I was a teenager. I did have a few pop stars as well, but I did work a couple of years before I went to uni, just in an office, went to uni, did my history degree, and then, decided I really did want to be a teacher. So that's the route that took me in. I worked in mainstreams for quite a few years, but the last 16 years I've been working in a PRU. So although there are typical days, they're always very, very different depending on, obviously we have our lesson structures and stuff, but depends on how the students are feeling, if we've got something different happening on that day. So the days are really quite varied. Typical day, we have a morning school and an afternoon school. So we have students coming in for the morning and then a new lot for the afternoon. I'm head of humanities. I'm teaching humanities to Key Stage 3, sometimes in GCSE history to people in Key Stage 4, or a bit like Annie, I've had to retrain. I do health and social care as well. So could be teaching that too. So definitely very varied.
It's interesting over the course of both your careers that your subject specialisms have sort of evolved and changed. Is that something you welcomed, or is that something you found difficult?
Ooh. I think particularly Helen and I both sort of been head of humanities, so you have to kind of really get into the other subjects that you're working with. I kind of I had taught sociology once at GCSE for 1 year a long time ago, and then when we lost a sociology teacher, my lovely head teacher was like, well, you're the sociology teacher now, with someone else. So it's a kind of a challenge, isn't it? It's always interesting to think, okay, you're going to learn something new, and to begin with, you're a bit sort of cautious, thinking, well, is it going to be is it going to be as interesting as you hope, or is it going to be just a lot of work and you're not going to enjoy it? But actually,
it's completely from scratch, isn't it?
Yeah,
that makes it challenging.
Yes, and particularly this year, as I'm teaching more of the A level as well. And it is so much just me this time. I'm lucky I can ask other colleagues, but there's no one who's just the sociology specialist in the school.
How different is the pedagogy from one subject to another? I mean, you think about back to that day in September 1994 when the three of us sat in a room of 15 others, whatever it was, learning how to be history teachers. We were sort of filled with those notions of what it is to be a history teacher. Like there's never too many timelines, for example, right? So, but when if you're teaching geography, or if you're teaching health and social care, or if you're teaching sociology, surely they've got sort of different underpinnings, don't they? How do you learn that stuff if you don't come to it from the perspective of a geographer or the perspective of a sociologist?
But that's your experience, isn't it? Again, I think that after a while, you are a teacher, and within reason, I think you can pick up any subject and you can understand the pedagogy behind it, and work out, what's needed. But again, that's something that when you go into teaching, you think, oh, I can do my subject, but then how on earth can I do another subject? But after time, you can pick up other things.
Yeah, I mean, how children learn is the same, isn't it? So you're using lots of ideas, but with different content. I'm trying to think of some particular things. Obviously, I'm teaching sociology, and I desperately miss those timelines. And I can't resist every now and again saying, and it used to be like this, and 100 years ago, and And actually, you're just adding to the context, aren't you, of their understanding. So I think possibly everyone should try and teach some other subjects and be really familiar with some other subjects, and how they're taught, because you gain stuff, don't you? I know obviously we've all done a lot of observing of other teachers, like young teachers, and you always go away thinking, wow, that was a really good idea, I'm going to try that now. Or even something where you think, oh, I used to do that, I haven't done that for years, I must try and bring that into a history lesson or bring it into a sociology lesson. It's all good ideas, isn't it? It's all learning, it's all young people, their brains growing.
So
and it is looking for the links, isn't it, as well? Like you say, you're linking things together, and you take something from one subject and use it in another subject. Yeah, I definitely do that.
Definitely, yeah, and it really helps the kids then, because they seeing the links just makes the learning deeper, doesn't it?
Okay, so you might be teaching them sociology, but you're smuggling a bit of history in there as well, or
always.
Okay. And do you still have your poster of Elizabeth in your classroom, Helen, or is that hidden somewhere else?
Actually, I've absolutely no idea where that is, but no, because it's humanities now. We have to have a few things, globes and stuff like that. But
so you mentioned observation, and we're gonna get to our first proper question now, and I should say that obviously this is the ECF Staffroom. Elaine and I represent the UCL Early Career Framework program, but you two don't. Neither of you use our program in your schools. I don't know how you betrayed me quite so badly, but you did. But you're not here representing our program, and that's actually part of the reason why you're here, because we think you bring a completely different perspective to people who might be listening to this podcast who are doing our program. And in particular, what Elaine and I both spotted on Twitter, there were some questions started coming in from ECTs who clearly wanted an answer from a more experienced teacher. Maybe they were ECTs in schools where they didn't have a colleague who'd been teaching for 29 years. So we've got a couple of questions like that for you that we're going to pose to you first. And the first of those is, how do you raise your spirits after an observation that you don't think went that well, and having to wait until tomorrow morning for the feedback?
Well, there's nothing worse, is there? Nothing worse. I think we've probably all had that sinking feeling.
Yep.
We've all known those observations. I think it's important to do reflecting, and probably, you come out the observation, it's not going to happen until tomorrow to get the feedback, but I've always sort of thought, right, obviously what happened, why did it happen? You've got your what went well as well, though. I think that's important to try and put that on there. But if you have that discussion with yourself, you're then ready the next day to have the discussion with whoever's done the observation. And I think it's then really important to try and park it, which I know is difficult because you're probably still thinking about it, but you can't change anything. It's happened. You've done your reflection. Now you need to just think, right, okay, let's leave that till tomorrow. And then hopefully your spirits will be raised, and don't think about it too much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think it is, if you can talk it over with someone, I think that's really helpful. You sort of talk through it and think, reflect, think about what you would do differently. And so that when you have that conversation the next day, you're actually going to be really ready for it.
Yeah.
You can actually really take on board any advice that you're given, but also that you've already kind of taken a certain amount of ownership. If there was something that didn't quite work as well, you've already got some sense of how you're going to improve it next time, what it is that you're going to do. And so you're no longer out of control, waiting for something awful to be done to you, the sword of Damocles over your head. You've actually sort of moved on and taken control, and next time it will be better.
Yeah, I'd really agree with that as well, because it's hard, because you're sitting there thinking, if only I could go back to that moment. But actually what you've still got the opportunity to do, and what's not been lost, is your ability to show whoever was observing the lesson, how self-reflective you can be. And actually, in many senses, that's a very powerful thing to show somebody, and a really difficult skill to have as a teacher, because in so many ways for teachers, your sense of self and vulnerability is so wrapped up in your teaching that sometimes it's hard to separate it and divide the two. But if you can separate it and realize that that lesson isn't you, it's just one lesson in a whole series of lessons across your career, and that actually it's a real opportunity for you to show the observer that you can learn from your mistakes and be reflective. In many ways, that's one way of thinking about it that might help.
I guess it's the reason why you might leave it till the following morning, why the observer might say, go home, I'll talk to you tomorrow about this, because you need to have that distance. And although you're right, Helen, you might sort of worry about it, you might even lose a bit of sleep over it, but actually the point is to separate yourself out that little bit from the incidents or the events that took place during the lesson and think again about what I might have done differently or what I did well, or create that sort of critical distance. It's tough though, isn't it? It's tough.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're an early career teacher or new teacher into the profession, then all feedback is taken as criticism, really, isn't it? There's always a feeling that it's never as good as it should be. There's always more that I could do better, and that's quite hard, to take that on board when you're a new teacher, isn't it? When you're giving feedback, do you bear that in mind as you're giving feedback to new teachers?
Yeah, I think it's always really good if the teacher can actually tell me, rather than again having it done to them. So I might encourage the conversation, and I certainly try to encourage them to sort of be reflective. And a lot of my feedback, I'm often asking questions, so why did you do it like that? Why was that better? Are there other ways you could have done it? Because actually what I want them to do is not feel bad that, there's something they could have done brilliantly and didn't, but actually to be thinking about there are different ways. I did it this way this time, and it might be worth trying out something different next time, even, that may or may not be better, but, you don't just repeat the same thing every time.
I think the whole point. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Helen.
I was going to say the whole point of, feeding back from an observation is to be supportive, isn't it? And it's still this dreaded thing that's going to happen, and people worry about it, and that is only natural. But hopefully, we really want to create a culture when we're feeding back. How can we support? And like I think Mark mentioned before, or Annie mentioned before, we're learning, aren't we, from others as well. When we're observing them, we always come out of something we can use ourselves. So the fact that, we need to try and be as supportive as possible and create that kind of culture rather than maybe the critical culture.
I was going to say as well, it's funny because when I look back over the course of my career and the different sorts of feedback I've had, actually, if I'm really honest with myself, it was the most difficult feedback at the time that probably made me the best teacher I am. So at the time, I didn't appreciate the feedback. In fact, I might have even chunted a bit about it with my friends afterwards. I might even have gone home and cried about the feedback. But actually, when I look back with a distance of 20 years on that feedback that I remember getting as an early career teacher, I can remember now that it's probably that feedback that actually forced me to do better and be better. And as harsh as it was at the time, you can normally take something from feedback that helps you grow. But it is really difficult. So I think in no other career would you have an observation where someone looks that intently at what you're doing. I think it's quite particular. I always say that to my husband as well with his job. If someone's to stand over your shoulder and observe every action, it's quite affronting, isn't it? And I think that is unique to teaching, and it is something quite powerful about it, but also quite difficult. And that brings us on to our next question, because teaching is hard. We know teaching is really, really hard, and particularly in the early years when you're learning and you don't have the benefit of 20, 30 years experience to fall back on. It can feel like it might never get any better. So the next question, another commonly asked question, is that ECTs keep hearing the phrase, it will get better when, for example, when you build relationships with the kids, when you complete your first term, after your first parents' evening, when a unicorn tap dances across the classroom. And I think that answer feels quite frustrating when you're starting out, to just constantly hear it will get better. So the question is, seriously, when does it actually get better?
It's a tough one. I was literally just having this conversation with a first year ECT actually, and she was making the joke that well, she's got through 2/3 of her first year, and obviously after the first year everything gets easy. It's all easy, isn't it? Perfect. Not really. I think every year, I mean, your first year of being ECT is just, it's a lot of survival, isn't it? It's a lot of you are so surrounded by people, both grown-up people and younger people, all wanting things, demanding things, and in no other career really are you quite so intensely sort of surrounded by people who will need something from you. So that there is a certain level in which you're getting through on sort of adrenaline and survival mode, and you are learning so many skills and so much content as well, because you might be teaching all sorts of things that you might have, in our case, a history degree, but you're teaching stuff that was no part of your history degree. And even if it's at Key Stage 3, you do have to know something, be a page ahead of the kids in the textbook or something. So it was such an intense year, and then hopefully the next year you've got a lot of the basic skills and you can have that, heave a sigh at the end of that first year, go away on your summer holidays, but then you start thinking about what you're going to do even better. And I think, the kind of best young teachers that I see are the ones who then really want to recognize that's when they've got to work really hard, that's when they want to actually get good. They might be pretty all right. But you don't want to just stay at that point, do you? You want to sort of really improve and get better. So I mean, sorry, my dog wants to join in the conversation as well. Sorry about that. Yes, she is. She's agreeing. But then at every point of your career, and Helen and you guys and I, we've all done this at different points in your career. There are different challenges, aren't there? So it might be that you've taken on a new role in school. It might be that you suddenly got to teach health and social care or sociology when that really wasn't your background or what you had part of your plan. It could be other commitments. You're going to run in the Boston Marathon and you've got to somehow squeeze a little bit of training in somehow, as one of my colleagues does. Or it might, you've got a growing family or something like that. So every year will have challenges, and that's part of what makes it interesting, because you're never bored. There's always something new. You're not just going to repeat what you did every year for the last 10 years.
Yeah,
Never
I mean,
bored,
I'd echo
never
what
bored,
Annie,
Helen? You never
Annie
bored?
said. No, never bored. Definitely never bored. I mean, teaching is just this complex, multitasking career that there's always something new to learn. And when I was thinking about, does it get easier? Like Annie said, it does if you after the first year you've obviously got a few tricks up your sleeve, and you may well have you've done some planning, so that makes it a little bit easier the following year, because you may only have to tweak and not completely write a whole new scheme of work. But things are thrown at you over different times, and then you do have to respond to that. But you evolve, don't you, as a teacher? You without even knowing, I mean, I couldn't give a magic date, but suddenly you do have this kind of you develop your emotional resilience. So you can keep going on stuff. Things don't get to you quite so much. Your instinct becomes more honed. You can see what the behaviour of the students is. You can pick up on what's happening without even looking in that direction. You know what's going on. Same with the lessons. You're doing a lesson and you instinctively know whether or not it's working. And if it's not, you've got something up your sleeve. So all of that happens over time, and that's what the experience is. And it's going to happen at different time for different people. So bits get easier, definitely, but equally there's always challenges. But that's what makes it great. That's what makes it's never boring. There's always something else to do, that you're challenging yourself. So you're always learning as well alongside the students.
You said bits. Does it always, when you are learning how to do this thing, it just feels like lots and lots and lots of bits, doesn't it? So you've got the bits of the curriculum you've got to teach, and there's the bits about getting the children into the classroom, or sitting down, or listening to you, or answering questions, or those are all bits. And of course, with a framework like our framework, there's a whole lot of other bits that they've got to learn about and learn how to do. And it can feel like that, can't it? But I suppose once you use the word instinct, Helen, once these bits start to become part of your instinct, then they get easier to do. You start even thinking about the bits. You're thinking above those. You actually start looking at the children themselves and thinking, well, actually, how are they learning, rather than what am I doing? But it doesn't happen all at once. There are very, very few teachers I've ever met. New teachers had it from the beginning. very, very few. It can take, as you say, it takes different amount of time for different people.
Yeah, I'd say the complexity of the role never changes. That's illustrated by both of you having to pick up and learn new subjects, but maybe there's something in the ability to cope with that and the complexity. I was thinking a bit like juggling, when you get the balls juggling. Once you've got them juggling in a routine, you can keep throwing in more balls and drop them, but you have to get those balls going in a pattern first of all, otherwise you're going to drop all the balls, and that's really hard to get yourself in that initial routine where you're coping with all the bits at once. But for me, it was about confidence. I remember all of a sudden, I think I spent my first year just thinking, what am I doing, and who's going to come through the door and find out about me and say you've got absolutely no business being a teacher because you don't know what you're doing. So I felt like I was sort of in an episode of faking it for a whole year. And then I remember gradually, as I went on, I came back in my second year and kind of felt like, no, I do have a right to be here and I do belong here. And I think that sense of belonging and feeling more comfortable for me was when it clicked into place. But I think it is different for different people.
And I think it's important to say that it's okay to feel lacking in confidence. It's okay to feel that this is hard, that it does feel like the bits that don't, it's okay not to have it as your instinct yet. It will take time. And no one should feel, no new teacher, or even not just new teacher, people might be in their second or their third year and they're still finding aspects of the job really quite difficult to become habitual. They shouldn't feel, you shouldn't feel bad about that. That's just, most people can't do this job. Most people are not cut out for this job. It takes a special few who are good enough to be teachers. And thankfully we've got, many thousands who still want to be teachers.
And even if you are good as a teacher, you won't be good at absolutely everything. There will be all sorts of things that are not your strength. And as time goes on, you learn ways around it, don't you? So never give me a year 7 group where I have to count up the credits, because I can't do it. But I can get a kid to do it,
Yeah, that's very true. And also acknowledging you're part of a team and drawing on that team dynamic, because like you say, when you're team planning, you might not all be good yet at certain aspects of the curriculum, but there'll be someone on the team who you can draw on that is. So it doesn't have to be seen as a sort of solo game all the time, although it can feel like it when you close your classroom door and you're on your own with 30 children who sometimes don't always want to learn what you're teaching them, but it is a team game as well.
And talking about team, the next question is about that, really. It's about when the team is a bit of a problem for you. So it's interesting because both of you have been in our heads of department, and so you'll have had teachers in your department who maybe didn't like teaching the way you were telling them they had to teach. So from the perspective of an early career teacher who doesn't agree with the way their head teacher wants them to teach lessons, what do you do in that situation? What how would you advise early career teachers who find themselves in that position today?
I would say sort of communication is key, really. You need to talk to your head of department. I mean, it depends on what the situation is, but if you're being told to teach something in a particular way, what's the reasoning behind it? So if you can work out what their reasoning is, and obviously have some consideration that they have a bit of experience as well. So you may want to blend your ideas with their ideas and see if you can talk to them about how you can both work together in that way. I mean, I've always been lucky. My first head of department when I was an NQT, she was brilliant. There were two of us who were history NQTs, and she just let us go with it. She was always, try this, do that. What do you want to do? Yeah, that'll work. And I think I was really lucky. And my other heads of department have also been of that ilk. So I personally haven't actually experienced being told what to do. So I think it's a difficult position if you're in it, especially if you are an ECT, because it's quite a big thing to say to someone, I don't like the way you're doing that, and challenging that. But there are ways around it. But I think you need to talk, and you need to come up with ideas of your own and sort of present those.
Yeah, I agree. It could be that your head of department might be trying to save you from yourself because they've spotted a flaw in your logic. So talking about it, talking it through, maybe compromising, maybe if you've got a particular thing you want to try out, maybe you do that, with support from them, maybe with a particular class that is particularly malleable. And obviously, if they are your head of department, then, at the end of the day, I guess you've got to compromise and listen to what they're saying to you. But also, the whole purpose of being in your early career is that you do try things out. So you should be given opportunities to, take some risks, with support, and try some things out. And some of them will work and some of them won't. So you should have the chance to try something, but do listen to your head of department, because they may have spotted that that's not the right class to do that with, or not the right topic. Communicate, as Helen says, find out why it is that they don't really want you to teach it in that way.
Yeah, this is one of the questions that came from Twitter, and we can only guess what might have been lying behind the question, because this is an ECT who, whether they're on our program or one of the other programs, is obviously learning about the early career framework, and that's got a particular set of, there's research behind that. And so I can only imagine that she's going into her job and she feels that she's got sort of some of the latest research behind her as she's teaching these particular ways. And maybe she's in a department that's got a different perspective on some of this research, or perhaps isn't aware of the same research. And so I can imagine that this is a situation that some of our early career teachers will be in, because they'll be teaching in schools or in departments that have their own approaches to pedagogy or to curriculum building or whatever it might be. So you can see that this could be the case. And we know that there are schools and families of schools out there that have particular centralized curriculums, and they think that they've worked out what they feel are the best ways of teaching. But a new person joining that school might be coming with, filled with new ideas or different ideas which might have come from the framework. So you're lucky, Helen, if you've never been told how to teach.
I think if there is another ECT, I mean, Helen was lucky to be with another NQT as we were then, and I had the same experience. I mean, I had a slightly different head of department, which I can't really talk about, but it was pretty awful. But in an odd way, he didn't tell us what to do, because he wasn't very interested, shall we say, to put it very politely. But if you've got another ECT to work with, you might be able to support each other and bounce some ideas around. And that's kind of one of the great things about having early career teachers in a department, isn't it, or in the school as a whole. in that you bring lots of ideas and lots of enthusiasm and some energy, and then we all sort of learn and nick your best ideas.
Yeah, and I also think, however, sort of, and you know, one would presume the curriculum is carefully crafted by the head of department, because that is their job to think about a well sequenced curriculum for the students. But what I always liked about teaching is your role in the classroom always involves an important part of ownership, which is you thinking about how you contextualize that curriculum for your students, and whatever is you're teaching, how that works for your students. And maybe that's a good way in to the conversation as well, which brings us to our next question, which is asked a lot, understandably, by ECTs, and I know it was something I thought a lot about when I was training, and I'm sure we've all had this feeling. I know I've had this feeling on the way to work, which is that sense of dread you've got because of a certain class you have to teach, and it's not going well, and the behaviour of the students in that class is not good, and you dread it from the moment you wake up, and you worry about it constantly to the moment that it happens. How do you manage that? How do you deal with that?
I think partly it's what Helen was saying about how you build up a certain amount of resilience, because I did have a class like that, a year 11 group last year, who, you know, had that effect on me. And actually individually, if I was talking about, you know, the actual students in that class, individually they were, you know, all interesting. Most of them were absolutely great kids, but as a combination of students, it was just the most challenging group that I've taught in a long while. And of course I was absolutely desperate to get them you know, good GCSE grades, because they were year 11, and it so absorbs so much of your time that it is exhausting. But you build a certain amount of resilience over the time. I know it's often said, but if you can get to know the students individually, you know, maybe away from the classroom setting, it really does help, you know, because they start to see you not as the person sort of looking sort of really mean and nasty at the front, but, you know, that you're actually interested in them. So you build up those relationships, and try and, particularly if it's lower down the school where they're maybe a form group, try and observe someone else teaching them, which I know if you're in primary school, that might be extremely challenging to do if you've got a particularly difficult group. But it's always good to see someone else, how they handle, you know, sort of, you know, a challenging group, and do talk about it. You know, don't just feel like you're being overwhelmed and you can't share with people, because I think that's actually quite unhealthy, because sometimes people get into dig themselves into a real hole. What do you think, Helen? You have the most challenging children, don't you?
We do have quite challenging children. I definitely echo what you said about a relationship. I mean, teaching at a PRU, we do have individuals that we need to get to learn. We need to sort of get to know them and build up some kind of relationship and look for a way in. I mean, even just a couple of weeks ago, I was struggling with one individual, and I was asking my colleagues, what do you think, you know, how do you get this person to even respond to you? And, you know, everybody comes up with different ideas, but, you know, oh, do you know he really likes cars, or do you know he really likes football? And so that's kind of a way in. But yeah, I think it's what Annie said about you know, talk to other people. There's going to be other ECTs, there's going to be your mentor, there's going to be other colleagues, and you can guarantee that 9 times out of 10 everybody is having problems with similar class. You know, it's not just going to be you. I think so you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. You are learning, and I mean, like I said, you know, I ask for help sometimes because you're at a loss. If you really can't work out, you know, a way in with the group, think about going and seeing how other staff deal with them. Yeah, and I think when you're actually teaching, as long as you plan on the teaching as well, think about different ways of, you know, how can I engage this class? How can I get them as soon as they come in? Get the snappy starter, all of, you know, the sort of the teaching side of things as well, and the relationship side of things, and just keep keep plodding away. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a slow burn, but you know, you can get there with classes, definitely.
Yeah, and very often that's the class. If you're off on a training or something for a day and you miss their lesson, those will be the kids who are the most outraged that you weren't there. It's weird, that, isn't it?
That is the funniest thing, isn't it? How did you manage that, Elaine?
For me, what often works is I actually simplified my lessons quite a lot sometimes when I had challenging classes, but I think that's because I knew that I had to devote quite a lot of attention to behaviour. So I often, you know, had a very simple task that they were doing, which they could do on their own, which then allowed me that banking time to walk around the classroom and have the one-to-one chat. So I kind of made room in the lesson actually for that. So, you know, I was an English teacher, so they'd be doing a writing task or something, which allowed me to walk around the room and build those relationships, have those conversations. The other thing I used to do, and again, I don't know whether this translates to other subjects, but the thing I always found in the English classroom was give them a sense of success. So the hardest class I ever took on, and I knew they were not confident at English, quite low prior attainment, is that they wrote, and again, this is quite labour intensive, so I'm not suggesting everyone go away and do this, but they wrote stories and I typed them up for them, and we spent ages just going over these stories and me giving them feedback. And I made sure that every single person in the class had a successful story. And once I'd got that and they had the confidence, then I built from there. So for me, it is about kind of simplifying your lesson. I mean, I guess, you know, that was adapting the curriculum somewhat, but I felt they needed it, because I just personally felt with that group of kids that until they felt a sense of success and until I could build that relationship based on, look, we've done that together and we have that sense of success, and they kind of moved forward from there. They still gave me lots of cheek all year, but and lots of funny stories, but we kind of went from there. Yeah, so I think actually actively planning it in your lesson, that kind of time to have those one-to-one discussions and build relationships and give lots of positive feedback, but also reinforce rules as well, because sometimes you do just need to, you know, be able to take a step back in the classroom and just watch what's going on and actually make sure that the students that are doing the right thing are being rewarded, and the students that aren't doing the right thing are understanding that they're doing the wrong thing. And sometimes you have to give yourself time and space to be able to actively do that and build that in, I think.
I remember being told once by, I think it might have been my first head of department actually, he said to me, never let them feel that you've given up on them. And actually I was thinking of you, Helen, because obviously you are teaching lots of children who do feel that they've been given up on. That's you know, one of the reasons why they've ended up in a referral unit, that, you know, the school they've been in have struggled so hard to keep them in their school, but it's not succeeded for them, so they've come to you for another chance. And you mustn't give up on them, you know, even if it's as hard as it might be, you mustn't give up on them. And I think that's true of all of us, isn't it? As hard as that is, you know, and as energy sapping as it can be, or as emotion sapping as it can be, never to give the impression of any child that you've dismissed them. Just that's it. And which is why you were typing up those stories.
It's funny what you said, Annie, there, about those kids actually being the ones you like the most, because I remember I started at a new school and I was quite an experienced teacher, but I think everyone that's an experienced teacher will know that when you start at a new school, it feels like you're starting from day one, or at least it did to me, because you know, you have no automatic respect in school. And I had a disastrous week with my year 8s, and I felt, you know, mortified at the lack of effort. And I thought, oh, they all hate me because I lost my temper and I shouted at them and it all gone badly. And then I was out on the weekend and I bumped into one of the students and I thought, oh, you know, this is all I need in my weekend. And I'll never forget the brightest smile, and he was so pleased to see me, and he talked excited about his lessons. And I know it sounds really, really silly, but it just made me rethink that these are a group of teenagers. I shouldn't take it personally. They don't hate me because I shouted at them. They've forgotten about it. Actually, they had moments in the lesson that they thought were good. And it just completely reframed my thinking. And that's probably a really silly example, but it does make you think that often you can take away stuff from the lesson that the students just they don't take it away in the same way.
Yeah.
In terms of behaviour. Which brings me on to the next question, actually, which is you must have, I know you're the people that we're asking to give advice now, and I'm sure people often go to you for advice, but you must have had people pass on advice to you throughout the course of your careers, which is good and bad. And I'm interested in what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, Annie?
I've had so much advice, and I couldn't think of, it was really hard to narrow down. One of the things which did pop into my head was something which really sustained me in the first sort of couple of years of my career, which was we got during our PGCE training, actually, Chris Husbands sort of was quite clear about, you learn how to plan lessons, with your Key Stage 3 classes. And actually, it's exactly the same for Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5. You're not doing something utterly different. It's still learning, and it's still learning about content, in our case, history. So get the objectives right and just teach them lessons. Just because they're 18 years old, they're still children learning. And so I still try and, when I'm planning lessons, which you don't have to do so much now because you've got lots of things on the system, but you still end up having to do some. I just think, what's a good lesson? How can I do some interesting activities to get, to build their understanding and develop, based on their sort of prior learning and so on. And, it shouldn't be different whether it's, like a 7-year-old or an 18-year-old. It's still children learning, isn't it?
Do you know, I remember him giving exactly that same advice. And we probably all feel this, because Helen, you and I were on teacher placement together, weren't we? And I remember we were given lots of GCSE and A-level classes to teach, and we thought we weren't prepared to do this. We didn't get any tuition from Dr. Chris Husbands on how to teach A-level. And I remember going back into the session at UEA and saying, Chris, can you teach us how to teach A-level? And he did exactly what you said, Annie. He said that, it's the, well, I've taught you how to teach Key Stage 3. It's not so very different. And he wasn't so very wrong, was he?
No, I remember that feeling of dread when we had those A-level classes, thinking, I have no idea. But no, it's true, isn't it? You're teaching the children, you're looking at the learning, and it is all the same, but it's just the different content, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think A-level can be more about getting your head around the content as well, because it's well, it definitely was in terms of English more complex and more difficult, and it was more about focusing on my sort of subject knowledge as well when I was teaching A-level. Over to you, Mark, I think, for the next question.
Well, with nearly 60 years of teaching between you, something funny must have happened. So there are things you can tell us and things that you can't tell us. But have you? It's a very serious job, and this has been a very serious podcast. So and we've obviously got a therapy dog in the background there, Annie. Any lighter moments you can share with us that you had from your time?
Can I say
dog recognizes my voice. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Your attention, which is quite sweet.
She's usually really good when I'm sitting at my desk. No, go to bed. And she normally ignores me when I've gone to my desk, because she knows I'm being boring and working, but she's a bit puzzled by this. I think a couple of things occurred to me. One is that the only other time she's actually intruded on a meeting, I was on a HODS, an SLT meeting, but because I wasn't working the day, I was doing it remotely for various reasons. And Mark was working in the desk, so I was in the front room. And so I had to sit on the sofa, and the dog could not get her head around this. And she literally kept joining in to my HODS SLT meeting, to the point where the head was talking about counselling and offered to buy a therapy dog for the kids if it helped. And the other thing, which happened very early on in my career as a Supremo of the history department, head of department, I was actually at home. And my colleague, my junior colleague, accidentally dialed my number while she was teaching, not conscious of it. And I could hear her teaching, and she was doing some really nice stuff. So I eventually managed to sort of cut the phone line off, and I phoned the school switchboard and gave her some notes on her lesson, including asking her to turn her phone off. which she much appreciated.
Did you grade her lesson as well, Annie? Did you give her?
Oh, it was outstanding.
It was absolutely
Excellent.
Helen.
Well, yes, working in a PRU, there's probably quite a few things that I'd love to tell you about, but I won't. I was having a think about this, and we're going back to mainstream days now. So a few years ago, and it was a sports day, and I noticed that all the kids are sat on the field and they have to sit in their form groups, but there was a group of Year 11 girls that absolutely refused to sit on the field in their form group. They're up against the wall in the shade. So as head of year, I was sent over to, go and investigate, see what was going on. And speaking to them, why aren't you going to go and sit with your form group? What's the problem? Well, miss, it's really sunny and we don't want our eyebrows to melt. So that's why they were sat in the shade. So not quite a teaching story, but it made me giggle.
I think that's perfectly reasonable. Actually, I would say. So sadly, because we know you've given up your time in your holiday, so we want to let you return to your holiday, but it'd be remiss of us to let you go without asking our final question that we ask everybody, which is that we like to give you a post-it note to write some advice on for somebody else. And you can stick this post-it note, this metaphorical post-it note, anywhere you like, and you can write any piece of advice you want on it. So for example, it could go on our desk here at UCL, or it could go on a desk somewhere else, or it could go on a desk of an early career teacher. So Annie, I'm going to pass you the metaphorical post-it note, and I'd like you to tell us what you're going to write on it and where you'd like to stick it.
I'm really rubbish at this, but I would like to give it to all the ECTs who might be listening, and I would just write on it, really enjoy what you're doing. It's sometimes when you're under so much pressure, it's really hard to actually do that. But, this is a career that can go on. You don't have to burn out. It can go on for quite a long time. So really find the pleasure in flight, find the fun and find the enjoyment in every day. Try and find something that will sustain you and keep you going, for those moments when you have the nightmare from hell or something goes wrong, because it is fun, actually. For all that it is really tough, really hard work, if you can crack it at all, it's brilliant. So enjoy it.
Thank you. I'm sure that's going to be wildly read and wildly appreciated as well. Helen, passing you your post-it note.
Thank you. I think I put this up in every staff room, and I would say learn to use the expertise of your colleagues. Mm-hmm. We're a great bunch, whether that's stuff in the classroom or whether it's having a chat in the staff room, being amongst a supportive staff and knowing, who's got the answer to various things. You can't beat that. It's something that if you're all in it together, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
yep.
That's why we called this the ECF staff room. We wanted to replicate this notion of having one space where colleagues, experienced and less experienced, come and meet together. And as it's a staff room and it's the end of our session, I can hear a bell ringing.
I can hear that bell as well.
Which is telling us that the caretaker wants us to go home and make dinner and see our children again and spend our time with our dog. Helen, lovely to see you again. We'll have to make an arrangement to bump into each other again in a caravan in Norfolk sometime soon.
Definitely.
Love to the family as well. Annie, I'll see you in a couple of hours, I guess. Thank you for your time, both of you.
Yeah, so much for letting us bask in your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. Bye.
Thank you.
Our thanks go to Annie Powell from the Urswick School in Hackney and Helen Lugger from North East Essex Cooperative Academy for sharing coffee with us this week in the ECF staff room.
We're particularly grateful to them for giving us the benefit of their wisdom of their 58 years experience. And in fact, we've just worked out that if we add Mark and I's experience in the classroom to it, it makes 100 years of teaching experience between us. So hopefully you'll all be able to benefit from those 100 years. As usual, please do get in touch with us if you'd like to talk about your ECF experience. We especially want to hear from a range of different voices. And in the meantime, we hope you join us next time for a biscuit and a chat with another colleague in the ECF staff room.
Thanks so much for downloading and listening to this IOE podcast.